Oh, that's a scary thought. Well, hey, welcome to Terra Nova. Great to see you guys on a Super Bowl weekend. If you joined us online, thank you for joining us online. It's Super Bowl. It's Jersey Day, right? It's Olympics are on TV. Basketball and hockey seasons are getting serious. It really is like the season for sports lovers, the season for competition. It's the season for people who want to be number one. You know, I want to be number one, best in the world at something. And I don't know if you consider yourself to actually be best in the world at anything you're best in the world at. But there actually is one thing that you are best in the world. You are number one. You are the world's greatest salesperson when it comes to selling yourself. You really are. I mean, you and I, we can sell ourselves anything. Isn't it true? I mean, you may not be able to sell a glass of water to a man dying of thirst in the desert, but you can sell yourself. We can sell ourselves anything. We're really like, we can sell ourselves things that are bad for us. We can sell ourselves on things that are bad for us, and we know they're bad for us, and we can sell ourselves on it anyway. I mean, just think of all of the dumb purchases you have ever made in your life and how you sold yourself on it. Think of the reasons that you gave yourself for purchasing it, but it's on sale and it's such a deal. I would be dumb not to buy it. I mean, I would be losing money not to spend this money. Plus, it has features that mine doesn't have, and I didn't even know I needed till I saw those features. But my goodness, I have to. I mean, just think of how easy it is to talk yourself out of exercise and into dessert. Right? I mean, you are really the world's greatest salesperson when it comes to selling yourself. Now, we all like to think of ourselves as like rational beings. And we like to think that when it comes to decision making, we're like science and data driven, and like we did our research. But all of the research into how people make decisions says, nah, that's not actually how decision making goes. Here's how decision making actually goes. I want it. I want something, I want her, I want him, I want that, I want to buy that, I want to go there, I want that. And then I go looking for reasons to get it, right? And we select data based on what we already want. That's called confirmation bias. It's a thing. Google it. You have it. And we sell ourselves on what we want to believe about our political views, or we want to believe about the car that we want to have. We go looking for reasons. We ignore evidence and voices to the contrary. That's what confirmation bias is all about. I want it. I go looking for reasons. And then step 3, I believe my reasons. I actually believe them. Now, that's kind of funny and it's kind of true. It's like, well, that's human nature, and okay, that's interesting. But here's why that's a big deal. Because we have all participated in all our own bad decisions. We are the common denominator in them all, by the way. We have all participated in all of our bad decisions, all of our bad relationship decisions, all of our dumb purchases, all of the conflicts that we've gotten ourselves into that we didn't mean to and knew we shouldn't have gotten ourselves into and then made worse. Hello, all of our unhealthy choices, all of our bad parenting decisions, our bad professional decisions. We are all the masterminds behind our worst mistakes. And because of that, we all have the potential to become, and frankly, all of us have been at times our own worst enemy, probably in ways that we did not even know or recognize. And so, since we all have that potential, and we do, and since we're usually becoming our worst enemy before we even know it, the question we've been asking in this series is, how do I keep from doing that? How do I keep from becoming my own worst enemy? And in this series, we're talking about three preemptive habits to ensure that we won't become our own worst enemy. Preemptive because we're usually becoming our own worst enemy before we know it. 3 preemptive habits to ensure that we won't become our own worst enemy. And the money back guarantee of this series is, if you do these 3 things consistently, you will not only avoid becoming your own best friend, but you just might be, or you might avoid becoming your own worst enemy, but you just might become your own best friend. So, preemptive habit number 1, we talked about last week. Anybody remember what preemptive habit number 1 is? Just call it out loud, say it out loud. Play the movie. Yeah, play the movie. Play the movie. Never see any individual action as an isolated thing in and of itself, because no individual action ever is. Any one thing you do, any one choice is really kind of like a scene in a larger, longer movie, the long arc, the story really, which is the story of your life. And in order to understand that decision, you kind of have to play it. You have to play that movie, play it out all the way to the end. How will this story play out? How will this decision ripple into other things? Where does this last domino actually fall? Now, this idea of play the movie, this habit is based on a principle in the book of Proverbs that we talked about last week called the path principle. This idea that every behavior, every decision, every choice is like a link in a longer chain, like a step on a path in a direction that has a destination. And that path determines the destination. That path or that direction that's what's going to determine where you will end up. And because that's true, because every step is a direction on a path, and because paths have destinations of their own, which you cannot wish away or change by wanting it to be different, playing the movie involves looking down that path into the future, not just to the immediate cause and effect, if A, then B, which, by the way, that would be a step forward for many of us right there, just like, okay, if A, then B, but not just the immediate cause and effect, what we call last week the ripple effect. After A, then B, but then B becomes a cause which leads to C, and then D, and then E, and on, the unintended consequences, or what are sometimes called the second order effects, the unintended consequences of my decision in this moment. Asking ourselves questions like, what story do I want to tell with my life? What story do I want to tell with my life? What story would I want to tell eventually about this? Where is this going to get me in the long run? Really? What will be the ripple effect of this decision into the lives, not only of my own future story, but into the lives and the stories of others? What might those unintended consequences be? If I walk this path, what story will my children eventually tell? What story ultimately do I actually want to tell God? What will be the story of my life? Now, really clear before we jump on, to be clear, playing the movie does not save me or save you from tragedy or suffering. Playing the movie does not save you from tragedy or suffering. Tragedy and suffering and adversity will come into your path, even if you're doing the right thing and the wise thing. And in fact, sometimes precisely because you're doing the right thing and the wise thing. And playing the movie does not save you from tragedy or suffering, just stupidity. Just self-inflicted tragedy and suffering. That's what it keeps you from. And wouldn't you agree that there is enough tragedy and suffering and pain in this world that we do not need to add to it by bringing more upon ourselves or upon people who are around us? And that's what playing the movie does. It doesn't keep us from tragedy or stupidity, or suffering, but it does keep us from stupidity. So play the movie, play the movie. Now, that's really good advice. In fact, wise people are doing this all the time. In every facet of their lives, they're always kind of thinking that farther ahead. Where does this go? Proverbs 14:8 says this: the wisdom of the wise, or the wisdom of the prudent, is to give thought to their, what's that word? Ways, to their ways. This isn't just a decision. This isn't just an isolated action. No. This is a way. This is a path that goes somewhere, that ends somewhere, and this is part of a way. And I'm going to give honest consideration or thought to that. That's what wise people do all the time. But we ended last week saying there is a major reason why play the movie absolutely will not work for you. It won't work at all. It may never work for you. In fact, it might prove to be entirely unhelpful. And the reason for that is found in the second half of this proverb. The second half of this proverb says, but the folly of fools is, say that word out loud together. And there it is. And there it is. There's the fly in the ointment. There's the flaw in the system right there, because here's the thing about me. And it's the thing about you. We all lie. We lie a lot. And the person we lie to the most? Ourselves. We all lie. We all lie a lot. And the person we lie to the most is actually ourselves. It is one of the most frequently studied and well documented and well researched of all like the social psychological phenomenon. We all lie to ourselves. We lie to ourselves about what we want, what we're doing, why we're doing it, why we want it, where it will go, how it will end up, what the ripple effect will be. And then there are moments that we've all had where we're just on the other side of being our own worst enemy, and we smacked ourselves in the forehead and said, I should have seen that coming. Oh, I should have seen that coming. But then, isn't it true that often enough, we actually kind of did? We kind of did see it coming. We actually kind of could have seen it coming, and we pretended not to? What's that about? What's that? We all lie. We lie a lot, and we lie especially to ourselves. And if we are lying to ourselves and hiding from the truth, playing the movie doesn't work at all. I was talking with a man who had been having an affair for quite a while, and he was finally going to leave his wife and his kids. He was going to get a divorce so he could be with the person that he now considered his soulmate. And as he played the movie forward, the way that story played in his mind was that within a short period of time, everybody would forgive him and actually be happy for him, and that ultimately his kids and their families and such, they would all be coming over for barbecues and the holidays and Christmas and such. And he was so angry and really could not see for the life of him why everybody was so broken and upset about his choices, and why his kids, who were quite a bit older, high school, college, young adult age, why they were so devastated. And he said, aren't they just supposed to forgive me? John, shouldn't you tell them that they should forgive me? Aren't they supposed to be happy for me? And while he was playing the movie, he was in La La Land. He was in a fairy tale world where he could walk a path that always ends with this train wreck of twisted steel and human carnage in its wake, and somehow magically land in this fairy tale ending of happily ever after. And he was actually angry that it wasn't working out. And he was playing the movie, but he was lying to himself. And that movie doesn't really end that way, like ever. And that's why preemptive habit number 2 is tell the truth. Play the movie, but tell the truth at least to yourself. At least to yourself. Now, to be clear, I am not even beginning to suggest that you become the kind of person who tells everybody else the truth about you all of the time. I'm not even saying like that's what you're supposed to do from now on. That's for the overachievers, okay? That's for those people who want to live like just wide open, unguarded, in the light, who really value transformation and their own character growth so much that they don't mind dealing with the mess that gets in the way of it. That's for people who are so comfortable with their glory and their fallenness that they can be frank and forthright with their fallenness, secure in their forgiveness. That's crazy. Like, that's crazy town. That's for those people. I'm not even suggesting you need to go that route. But here's the deal. If you are going to lie to everybody else, if you are going to lie to me and your mama and your boss and your ex, if you're going to lie to your kids, if you're going to lie to everybody else about what you're really doing, what you really want, why you really want it, how it will play out, how rosy it will be, and how justifiable you are in making those decisions, if you're going to tell those stories and spin that yarn to everybody else, at least have the decency to tell yourself the truth. Tell yourself the truth. Now, there's a big problem with this. It's a big problem, and I almost feel bad for saying that that's an important habit, because the thing about this problem is it's a problem you can't escape and you will never, ever overcome. And so I'm going to ask you a question, but before I ask you the question, I want to give you the answer to the question. The answer to the question is no. In fact, I want us to all say the answer to the question out loud together, loud and proud. Will you answer the question with me? The answer to the question is no. Here's the question. Am I being completely honest with myself? Answer? No. Nope. Probably not. I'm not even sure I know. the complete honesty about myself. Now, to get at this, I want to take a look briefly at a horrible story. It's a terrible, horrible story, a story of people who really were their own worst enemies. It is a cautionary tale, okay? It is a story of a man named Jeremiah who was a bullfrog and a prophet. I think the bullfrog might have been named after the prophet because the prophet came way before the bullfrog. Jeremiah, who was a prophet during the end of Israel's history as a nation and during the destruction of the city of Jerusalem for the first time by the Babylonians. And the story goes all the way back to 605 BC, where this part of the story begins after the long and slow decline of their nation. And Nebuchadnezzar from Babylon, fresh from decimating the kind of waning empire of Assyria, defeating Egypt. So this is the superpower on the rise. He conquers Jerusalem and he takes Jehoiakim, who is currently the king, and he says, hey, you work for me now, okay? You work for me if you will send me my check every month and you will keep the peace, I will let you rule this little corner of my world for me. And Jeremiah the prophet goes to Jehoiakim and he says, listen. I've been telling everybody this for 20 years. I have been trying to tell everyone that this was going to happen. We have left God's path. We've chosen another path. And I've told everybody, this is where that path goes. This is how that movie ends. So Jehoiakim, just go with it, man. Be smart. Give Nebuchadnezzar his taxes. Don't try to find back. And instead, let's focus the nation on getting our hearts and our character and our way back into line, our community back in line. And then history tells us that Nebuchadnezzar's dad, Nabopolassar, dies way back in Babylon, and Nebuchadnezzar goes home to solidify his power, and he's gone for about 3 years. And during that 3-year time span, Jehoiakim developed something that we've all struggled with at times. When the threat of pain is taken away, Jehoiakim develops short-term memory loss. And he begins thinking, hey, I'm king. I am king of this town. I don't need to pay no stinking taxes to Nebuchadnezzar. And he starts sending Nebuchadnezzar his checks. And Jehoiakim's advisors, the people who have his ear, they begin to fill him with rainbows and unicorns. They begin to tell him, hey, Jehoiakim, Jerusalem is God's city. Jerusalem, and it has never been taken since our forefather David took it hundreds of years before. It's never been taken since. And besides, we have the temple. We've got God's temple in this city, and God will never let his temple be taken. And they kind of see the temple as like this magic charm, like a rabbit's foot, like this talisman kind of thing that's going to protect them somehow from bad things happening. And Jeremiah says to them, hear the word of the Lord, all you people of Judah and all who come through these gates to worship the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty, yes, he is, the God of Israel says, reform your ways. You're going the wrong way. You've got to change directions, reform your ways and your actions, and then I will let you live in this place. Do not trust deceptive words that say the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. Do not think that us having this building is going to save you. That's magical thinking. That's not reality. And if you do, if you really change your ways and your actions, and you begin to deal with each other justly, if you don't oppress the foreigner or the fatherless or the widow, if you use power for the benefit of powerless instead of to oppress them, and if you don't shed innocent blood in this place, and if you do not follow all of these other gods to your own harm, then I will let you live in this place, in the land that I gave your ancestors forever and ever. But look, you are trusting deceptive words that are worthless. In other words, Jeremiah is saying, you are lying to yourselves. You are lying to yourselves to avoid what you actually know is true, from doing what you actually know is right. And so Jehoiakim does what you do when somebody keeps telling you what you don't want to hear. Jehoiakim throws Jeremiah in prison. Now, you probably don't actually do that. You might if you had the power, but we all have our Jeremiahs, right? Like people who tell us what we don't want to hear, and we all have our own inner Jeremiah, and we all have a way of blocking those voices out, locking those voices out, unfriending those voices, whatever we have to do, because they're telling us what we don't want to hear. Well, Nebuchadnezzar comes back. And he is in full strength now. He brought the whole army and he is ticked. By the way, he does not need the army to defeat Jerusalem. But he is in force. And he sieges the city, surrounds the city. Within a short period of time, the people in the city kill Jehoiakim and throw him over the wall like a dog, like an animal. Just like, here, he's gone. Don't be too mad at us. And Jehoiakim's son, Jehoiakim, becomes king, surrenders the city to Nebuchadnezzar. The Babylonians come in, strip the city of its wealth, strip the temple, and they cart off all of the leading citizens, including a guy that you may have heard of before named Daniel. If you've ever heard of like Daniel in the lion's den, that's that guy, and that's how his story starts as a prisoner of war right here in the middle of our story. Carts off Daniel and a bunch of others, carts off the entire animal, and they take Jehoiakim, the current king, to Babylon as well in chains. And Nebuchadnezzar makes Zedekiah, who's Jehoiakim's brother, Jehoiakim's uncle, he makes Zedekiah the new king, the new puppet king. And he says the same thing. He's like, listen, do not make the same mistake. This is strike two. I do not want to come back here. Send me my check every month. No more army. I'm taking your army. You don't get to have an army anymore. And don't even think about rebelling against me. And Zedekiah says, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And in fact, he swears to his God. I swear to my God, I will do exactly what you say. 2 Chronicles 36. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king. He reigned in Jerusalem for 11 years. And you think about this. Zedekiah saw his brother killed for opposing Nebuchadnezzar, thrown over the city wall. He's seen his nephew carried off to Babylon in chains. Zedekiah has seen the movie. He's seen this movie. He knows how this movie ends. You would think Zedekiah would get this right. But Zedekiah is like every single one of us. Zedekiah thinks to himself, I'm the exception. I'm the exception. Zedekiah suffers from something in recovery circles that's called terminal uniqueness. Terminal uniqueness. Terminal uniqueness goes like this. Well, I know that happened to him. I know that happened to her. I know that happened to them, but that's not going to happen to me. Oh, no. See, I can beat this. I can beat this. I can manage this. I can contain this. I can avoid this. My brother was an idiot. My nephew was a kid. This is different. Oh, no. This is unique. I'm different. That won't happen to me. That won't happen to me. You'll see. And Jeremiah tells him exactly what he told his brother. He says, listen, be smart, give Nebuchadnezzar his taxes, don't try to fight back. This is how the path we've been on ends. But we can change our ways. Like, let's focus the nation on getting our hearts and our character and our community and our way back in a line. But instead of listening to Jeremiah, Zedekiah bows all up and says, well, no, I'm king. And he makes a terrible decision. 2 Chronicles 36:13, and he also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him take an oath in his God's name. And you're like, what? What? That can't be. Listen, it's kind of like watching a movie. We've all had that experience where we reach a point in the movie where we can no longer suspend disbelief. You ever reach that point in a movie, you're like, no, never, I got to turn this off. People aren't that stupid. No. I'm sorry, you pushed it too far, you jumped the shark. People aren't that stupid. Nobody is going to go into that door right now, especially after what just came out of it. People aren't that dumb. Zedekiah stops sending the checks, starts raising an army, tries to make an allegiance with Egypt, which is really like a shadow of its former self. And I was thinking I might give some examples of nations that used to be like a big deal and they're now shadows of their former self, but I didn't want to offend anybody. So you can just think in your mind of nations that used to be a big deal and now they're a shadow of their former selves, and insert that right there. And then he's gonna like pair up with this with this, once great, but now fledgling group. And he's going to pick a fight with Babylon, which is the superpower in the world. And you don't have to be a prophet and you don't have to be a fortune teller to know how that movie goes. To play that movie and just go, man, that's a bad idea. That's a really bad decision. And Zedekiah actually comes to Jeremiah and says, Jeremiah, here's what we're going to do. Pray for us, bro. Will you pray? He writes it on his prayer request. Will you pray for me? Will you pray for us? And Jeremiah says, no, I'm not going to pray for you. I'm not going to pray that a bad decision and a dumb path will magically turn into a beautiful destination for you. I already know how this movie ends. And Jeremiah answers him. He comes asking for prayer. Here's what Jeremiah says. Send your messengers back with this. This is what the Lord says. Do not deceive yourselves. Do not deceive yourselves thinking the Babylonians will surely leave us. Because you remember back a bunch of years ago and Nebuchadnezzar just left and went back home. That is not going to happen. They will not leave. And in fact, this is harsh. Okay, this is harsh. Even if you were to defeat the entire Babylonian army that outnumbers you about 1,000 bloodthirsty, well-trained, savage warriors to one, and only the wounded men are left in their tents, they would come out of their tents, defeat you, and burn this city down. That's how the movie ends. So Zedekiah does what his brother did and what you do, because Jeremiah won't shut up. He's telling everybody in the city this, the city's gonna burn, get out of the city, leave the city. He is such a buzzkill that Zedekiah throws Jeremiah into a cistern, which is like a hole in the ground that serves as a backup reservoir for rain runoff and that kind of thing. Throws him into a cistern, throws a lid over it. Jeremiah still won't shut up. He's down in the hole. Repent, you're going the wrong way. And he still won't shut up. And then it happens. 587 BC. The story is told in Jeremiah 52. It's a terrible, terrible story. You should read it. Nebuchadnezzar surrounds the city. They lay siege to the city for a year and a half. Siege warfare is a form of ancient warfare where they would just strangle the life out of a city. They would surround it with an army. They wouldn't let any supplies in or water in. They wouldn't let anything out either. And so they just kind of lock the city in until it starves and dies of thirst and dies of disease slowly inside the city until all of the defenses are gone. And after that happened, they breach the city. The Babylonians, a year and a half later, breach the city. They pretty much kill anything and anyone who's left, and they take Zedekiah's family. And they duct tape Zedekiah to a chair, and they take his family, and one by one, they slaughter his family in front of him, and then they put his eyes out. And then they put his eyes out, and they take him in chains, and they drag him back to Babylon, where he will die in a dungeon in absolute darkness. It's whew, wow. That is a way to epically burn down your life and a bunch of other lives as well. That is being your own worst enemy. But he was warned and warned and warned, and Jeremiah played the movie for him again and again and again. This is how addiction turns out. This is how affairs turn out. They don't turn out well. This is how the path you're on turns out. But everyone refused to see. And Jeremiah's lived through this for 40 years under 5 different kings. He's seen this pattern and he's been watching it. Kings and leading citizens and supposedly educated people, as they, against all common sense, continue to lie to themselves about something that really should have been as obvious as the noses on their face, but they won't listen. They refuse to see. They refuse to tell the truth. And so in the middle of this whole thing, he makes a statement that I think is so insightful, especially considering this statement is made thousands of years before modern psychology and Sigmund Freud and the id and the ego and the superego and how we suppress truth and that whole kind of thing. He makes this statement so long ago that would identify all of this, and you can almost see him just shaking his head when he says this. Jeremiah 17, the heart, it is deceitful above all things. The heart is deceitful above all things. Like there is nothing that is more deceitful than the human heart, especially yours, especially mine. Our own human, it's more deceitful than the advertising industry. It's more deceitful than big tech. It's more deceitful than the politicians of the other political party. And you know how much you hate those weasels. It's more deceitful than their spin doctors, than Wall Street CEOs, than ambulance chasing lawyers. The heart is deceitful above all things. There is no one who can sell you a lie more effectively than you. It is deceitful above all things. And he says, it is beyond cure. It's beyond cure. In other words, there's no cure for this. There's no fix for this. There's no song, there's no sermon, there's no podcast, there's no prayer, there's no pill, there's no therapy, there's no amount of truth that can get dished out for you or for me that at the end of it, our hearts won't be deceitful anymore. Like I remember back in the day when that was my problem. And here's what that means for the rest of my life, for the rest of your life. Every time we're faced with options, every time we're in a decision-making context or environment, and there's appetites and there's emotions and there's things at play, but like it's business or it's career or it's school and what should I do, or it's money and expenses or relationships, conflicts, romance, marriage, parenting, for the rest of my life, I need to be aware that I carry in myself, not just the possibility, but the propensity to be lying to myself right now about what I'm facing and actually believing my own lie. I have within me something that will constantly make me my own worst enemy. And you do too. The human heart, oh my gosh, it is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. And then he asks the question, who can understand it? He's like, you can just see him like scratching his head going, this makes no sense. I've been watching it for 40 years. It makes no sense. And you don't understand it either, do you? And I don't understand it either. And that's why we've all said things like, I don't know why I did that. Jeremiah's back in the back going, I do. Ask me, I know why. I don't know why I said that. I don't know why I bought that. I don't know why I called him back. I don't know why I went over after I called him back and told myself it wasn't. I don't know why I did that. And Jeremy was like, I know the answer to that question. It's inside you. It's your heart. And it is deceitful. Who can understand it? And then almost to answer his own question, God speaks into this and says, I, the Lord, search the heart and examine the mind. I, the Lord, search the heart and examine the mind. The language here mirrors the language of a famous psalm, Psalm 139, written by David, as he makes this prayer. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Examine me, same language, same word, and know my thoughts. And the idea here is that God is always in the process of sifting through those deep inner parts of us that we do not understand in order to bring truth and bring reality to surface, like a refiner applying heat to metal to bring those impurities to surface. Like, can we deal with that now, please? That God is always in the process of trying to bring truth into our lives, but we, rather than embracing that, we actually prefer something psychologists call defense mechanisms. Defense mechanisms, the definition of a defense mechanism is the ways that people react to frustration and conflict inside themselves and around them, frankly, by deceiving themselves about their real desires and goals in an effort to maintain self-esteem and avoid anxiety. In other words, defense mechanisms are the ways that we lie to ourselves so that we can live with ourselves. I know I want this, and I know I probably shouldn't want this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. But then I'm going to tell myself a lie that actually makes me to be good with living with myself, even though I did that. Those are defense mechanisms, the way we lie to ourselves so that we can live with ourselves. And psychiatrists have actually identified and cataloged dozens of the ways that we all do this. 40 distinct defense mechanisms, including things like the granddaddy of them all, denial. You've heard of denial? It's a defense mechanism. Don't even know I am lying. I am so good at deceiving myself, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. I didn't even know I was lying to myself about that. Denial. Then one of my favorites, rationalization, the story I'm constantly telling myself that makes everything I do totally righteous and justifiable, even when I'm doing something I know isn't righteous. That's weird. Displacement, putting on others. Passive aggressiveness, which is acting out my emotions while saying I'm fine, right? Intellectualization, magical thinking, hypochondriasis, withdrawal, sexualization. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. The heart is deceitful above all things. Like, we have an amazing capacity to lie to ourselves, which is why it's so scary for me to hear someone say, and maybe you've heard someone say this before, maybe you've actually said this before, maybe after tonight you will never say it again, and you will certainly never say it to me. But it's so scary to me when I hear someone say, you should follow your heart. You should follow your heart. You know what? Your heart will never lead you astray. What? So no one has ever followed their heart into something really stupid, had their heart tell them it was good for them, and eventually decided it was really bad for them and wish they hadn't? Nobody's heart has ever done that? It happens all the time. Jeremiah's like, your heart is a liar. It's worse than a liar. It is a deceptive liar. It is a liar that you don't even know is lying. Why would you follow a liar? Well, put a pin in that. That's a conversation for another day. So here's the deal. Playing the movie is great. It's just wise. It's good advice. It's such good advice. But if I'm lying to myself, if I'm deceiving myself, if I'm refusing to be honest with myself, if I'm lying to myself about what I'm really doing, what I really want, why I really want it, my desires and my goals, my real desires and goals, and how that will likely play out into the future, my own terminal uniqueness and the ripple effect into other people's lives as well, as long as I am lying to myself, playing the movie will not help me. Not one little bit. And that's why the second preemptive habit is so essential. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. And if you can't tell the truth to anybody else, at least tell the truth to yourself, which means I decide this. I will not lie to myself even when the truth makes me feel bad about myself. I will not lie to myself even when the truth makes me kind of feel bad about myself. Did you know that there are worse things in life than feeling bad about yourself? I know that sounds shocking because in our culture, feeling bad about yourself is pretty much the worst thing that can happen. You don't ever want to feel bad about yourself. You never want anybody else to feel bad about yourself, and you certainly don't want to do something that'll make somebody else feel bad about yourself. But there are actually things in this world that are worse than feeling bad about yourself. I'll give you an example. Doing bad to yourself is worse than feeling bad about yourself. Especially if feeling bad about yourself for a short period of time keeps you from doing something bad to yourself. And by the way, doing bad to yourself while you're feeling good about yourself makes you a liar. That's what defense mechanisms are all about. And so I will not lie to myself. I'm not going to lie to myself, even if the truth about this, I'm not going to like telling it to myself. I am going to strive to be brutally honest, at least with me. At least with myself about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and what's going on inside of me and my own conflicting desires and my own inner Jeremiah and maybe even some of the Jeremiahs around me and where this kind of path often goes, and it may not be as rosy as I want it to be. I'm going to be honest with myself. I'm going to tell myself the truth. So today, let's just all make that decision, okay? Let's just all decide we're going to do that. In fact, I want us to say this out loud together. Will you say it out loud with me? And maybe even if you're watching at home, if you got the guts, say it out loud, and hopefully the people around you don't think you're weird. Let's say this out loud together. Will you say it with me? I will not lie to myself, even when the truth makes me feel bad about myself. One more time, just to kind of get it in you. I will not to, even when the makes me feel bad about myself. Now, each week, we're giving you a few questions to ask yourself to just kind of help you with the habit. I hope these kind of stick with you. These questions we've been raising are questions I ask myself all the time, all the time. They are regular parts of my own inner rhythms. And Jeremiah is like, hey, God is searching your heart. He's wanting to bring truth to the surface. But at the same time, with our defense mechanisms, we're like pushing that truth back down, like, no, I don't want to see that. I don't want to deal with that, and blocking the truth. So here are some questions, because this is a tough thing, to help us get past our defense mechanisms and cooperate with God and seeing the truth that's going on inside of us. And so here are a few questions. The first one is this: am I being completely honest with myself? Really? And the answer is no. No, probably not. No, I'm not. I'm so mad at them, or it's their fault and I'm not to blame and I'm the righteous one here. But I'm not going to lie to myself about myself, even if the truth makes me feel bad about myself. Am I being completely honest with myself? Really? A few more questions that might help us answer that honestly, to kind of dig a little deeper. Here are a few more. How might I be deceiving myself right now? Here's one of my favorites. What am I pretending not to know? Oh, that is such a good question. I'm trying to make this decision, but I just want to feel good about what I want. I just want to feel good about it and feel good about myself. What's the data, confirmation bias, that I would prefer to ignore so I can do what I want to do, have what I want to have, and not feel badly about it? Is there something I probably could foresee that I kind of do know, but I don't want to know it because I want what I want? What am I pretending not to know? Here are a few more questions. Why am I doing this really? Come on. Why am I doing this really? And you can substitute doing with a few other words. Why am I wanting this really? Why am I feeling this really? And you can become your own Jeremiah. You can become your own Jeremiah, your own skeptic. Just keep asking this question that I ask myself all the time. Really? Really? I'm listening to my own story, just blah, 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 and how good and righteous. I'm like, John, you are not that good. You are not that good. Really? Really? You have an inner Jeremiah. Don't throw him in prison. Give him a microphone. Let him ask you important questions. Why do I have to be right about this? Really? Why am I being so pig-headed and stubborn about this? Really? Okay, come on. What else would there be? What else is down in there? What might not be such a healthy motive? Why do I have to correct every detail in something other people say? Really? What's that about? Here's some questions. What will the long-term consequences be? Again, my favorite word, really. Okay, I've played this story out, but really? Might there be unintended consequences? Answer, yes. Always unintended consequences. Might there be some unintended consequences? Ooh, probably so. If so, what could they possibly be? Am I blocking out any voices that could be telling me or could potentially tell me the truth, but I don't want to hear what they say? I'm throwing Jeremiah in prison. Tell yourself the truth. Just at least to yourself. At least to yourself. I will not lie to myself, even when the truth kind of makes me feel bad about myself. How do you become or keep from becoming your own worst enemy? Habit number 1, play the movie. Habit number 2, tell the truth, at least to yourself. Now, these are 2 defensive strategies, but next week we're going to talk about a preemptive habit that actually gets you on the offensive side of the ball, on the offensive side of the issue, a life habit that will not only keep you from becoming your own worst enemy, but will probably make you your own best friend. And to find out what that is, do not miss next week as we wrap the series up. Let me close this in prayer. Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you so much that you love us so much. You love us so much, even at our worst. You love us so much that you want us to deal with truth and reality. You want to see genuine growth and transformation. You love us so much that you want to see us change ways that are destructive into ways that are beautiful and healthy and good. Thank you that you love us so much that you're always trying to do that. We all probably owe you 1,000 apologies for ways that we've pushed that voice away and shut that down. But I also want to just say thank you so much that as you bring truth to the surface, we never have to be afraid of it. You love us so much, we never have to be afraid of the truth that you bring to the surface because you already know what it is and you want nothing but our growth. And so we want to thank you for that. I just pray for all of us as we head into this week that you would give each of us the grace and the courage and the backbone and the self-awareness to not only play movies forward, but to to tell ourselves the truth, to see inside and tell ourselves the truth so that you can bring the change and transformation into our lives that you desire. And we pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, thanks, John. Hey, thank you so much for being here tonight. You guys are the smart ones that came on Saturday night because you know what? There's no wings tomorrow. Those folks get nothing. They get nothing. They get donuts. You could come back tomorrow for a donut if you wanted to. Hey, so grateful you're here tonight. Just want to remind you a couple of things that we talked about in our time together. The first is the serve brochure. This is a great way to really get involved. You'll meet people. You'll have a greater sense of meaning in what we're doing here together. And we wouldn't do this just to fill some spots. We do this because we know it will be significant in your life. So I want to encourage you, if you didn't fill it out already, to take that home with you, check it out, look through some of those items and find out a place or two where you can serve. If you have filled it out, you can drop it in the baskets on your way out tonight. Also, we would love to get the Connect card from you. Let us know how our team can be praying for you. Let us know you're here. Let us know who you're rooting for, maybe. If you didn't put that on there already, you should, especially if you're wearing a jersey. Definitely let us know that. Fill that out. Also throw it in the basket on the way out. And then lastly is just we always give an opportunity to serve because doing what we do in this community, number one, it costs money. And secondly, we have found that there is a great way to open up our hearts to just good things when we're generous. And so I would encourage you, if you have never tried generosity in this way, this would be a great way just to experiment and just go, wow, what is all this cracked up to be? Is it really as fun as they say it is? Because the answer is yes, it really is. Again, we wouldn't do it if we didn't think it was going to be meaningful and significant in your life. So just want to remind you about those three things and invite you to come back next week. We're going to wrap up the series with part 3, and we would love to see you here. This gathering is just so much better when you're a part of it. So hope to see you next week. Have a great weekend and a great week.